Hello and welcome to the Love Foundry podcast. It is Sunday the 3rd. How are you doing?
All right. Hi. What are we up to today? What's our title?
The title is Standing in the Sunshine of Love.
Ah, yes.
Which sounds pretty nice.
Well, everyone is. You see, that's something everybody is standing in the sunshine of love, and they haven't realized it. So it's not, when you got, I'm from Alaska, and I remember my mother telling me one time that we had, in the whole entire year, there were 5 days of sunshine. 5 days.
Oh my God.
And the average rainfall was 180 inches. The record is 220 inches in 1 year. And it's cold rain. Sideways rain, because it's probably blowing at 35, 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, the kind that stings when it hits your face.
Yeah, so when you get a sunny day, everybody's dragged themselves outside. And if it's a sunny day in the summer, which is hopeful, or the fall, then you get hours and hours and hours of it. You get virtually almost 24 hours of it, which is why everybody goes into the summer strangeness that is no sleep and endless hours of sunlight. My cousin would call me. We'd get up at 5 a.m. and go out in his boat and go fishing. We'd fish for 3 hours. Then he'd come back, dock the boat, and go to work. And then when you get off work, we go over to his house when I was up visiting. Last time I was there, we go over to his house and have a barbecue when he gets off work, start maybe 6 o'clock, end about 10 o'clock. And the sun has been up all this time. And so have we. And that's okay for a few days, but given the amount of sleep you get, you know what happens in the long run. Pretty soon you start to get dopey, and everybody gets this summer dopiness because there's just prana coming in from the sun. The energy of life is great, but you can only just run your system on it so long, and then pretty soon you're just kind of like, So that's just physical sunlight.
Yeah.
But spiritual sunlight, where the soul lives, is love. That's is the sun in the sky in that environment. If you're there, the chances are you won't see the physical sun unless you're living in both places and you're keeping a duality perspective going. And so it is the sunshine of love in the spiritual world. It provides light, and more than light, it provides life, the life that love carries in it. And so all the denizens of the soul kingdom, and the place is highly populated. It's just not visible to us, so we don't think of what the local landscape looks like. We don't think of the angelic beings that make up the clouds, the mountains, the streams, the forms, the structures. Everything that's there is built out of living beings animated by love, which is a really good idea when you think about it, because then they're all in harmony with love, which means very few of them are hating on each other. You get down into our environment and we have that turned off.
Yeah.
And it's just as if you had, I don't know, I grew up where there was no TV. We put an antenna on the top of a logging tree, and hopefully we could catch some snow with some shadows moving around in it. And that was TV when I was a kid. But you can turn to channel 13 and you can watch the Kingdom of Love if you've got that inside of you. Or you can turn back to channel 4 and you can watch the 6 o'clock news in a material world where the light of love has been tuned completely out. And because we grew up in and are living in a material world, and we have built an ego, a personality nature to live in that world that is built on the illusions of living without love, we don't see it at all. And we don't have the opportunity to just flip it back to 13, check in once in a while. Prayer help you do that. Go ahead.
Let's say I flip to channel 13. I'm become consciously aware of this light of love.
Well, do it while you're talking to me about it. Flip it to 13 and look at it. See it. Let it come into your nature. So we'll both tune into the light of love that's in that kingdom. And by you making yourself conscious of it, even if you don't see it, you're doing it because you want to do it. So you think your eyes control whether or not it's anybody else can see it or that it's here. That's not it. I can ask a blind guy to turn on the light and he can flip the switch even though he won't see it come on. So by you and I just checking in consciously, there it is. Let it fill the space. That doesn't turn the physical sun off. Nor does it turn your ego off. Nor does it turn your soul on, because your soul is already on, or you'd be off. Because when the soul withdraws from the material interest, you go with it. You're an extension of it into the material world. So now you've got two suns going on. Well, got a light going on in your room, and so do I, but the sun's outside right now where we are, shining away. But in the soul kingdom, night and day are one thing. It doesn't set. The sun in the spiritual kingdom does not set. It sits. It sits exactly where it is in the lighted focus of the sky. So I can't describe it better than that. You have to look for it yourself and see it, and then you see, oh, that's not quite how it looks in a material world, but it's what's going on there. So keep the light on while we're talking. If you're keeping the light on while we're talking, now you're doing the thing that you were born to do and are just now figuring that out. And hopefully we'll get somewhat figured out before you get too much older, because time is on the wing. And it's vitally important. Vitally important. Now, all of the spiritual beings that live there, consciously live there, even whether they're physically alive in this world or not. Many of them are. They create the spiritual hierarchy of the planet. They live somewhere up in the Himalayas or in a place or somewhere, and they're conscious of life, of their life in that kingdom. And they're interacting with lives in that kingdom that are familiar to them. And they're working on projects with lives in that kingdom that will benefit humanity, because they live in the kingdom of love, and we need it. We need it in our conscious awareness, just like they have it. So they're working on projects. The trouble with their work is that to project a project into the human world where you and I live, from where they're sitting or looking or standing, we have to respond to it with free will. Hold on. Let's see if this is, no, it's okay. They have to respond to it with free will in order to, we have to respond to it. Sorry. They've got plans worked out. They've got things they hope humanity will wake up to realize, to come into understanding of. So they put out some thought or feeling or project into the physical world through their disciples or through nature or through somehow. But we have free will. So we choose to respond to that effort or ignore it.
Do people sometimes choose to respond to that, but are unconscious of where that's coming from?
Of course.
Right.
Yeah, Henry Ford or someone, probably Elon Musk, probably people who are highly intellectual, highly powerful, responsive to the world they live in, trying to make human life better. Carnegie, who set up Carnegie was a steel guy, right? Made a lot of money in steel. And America was kicking off and using steel to fight wars and steel to make cars and all that stuff. So he made a ton of money. But he had a sense of, as a great industrialist, he had a sense of building a society, building a universe, building a world in which things worked for people. And he realized that one of the problems that people have is they're ignorant. They don't read enough. So he set up libraries in towns all over America. Now, I didn't realize what they were, but I was driving through Oxnard, California one time with my family, and I looked out the window and I saw a very strange building for Oxnard, California, which was a small produce growing town with mostly Mexican workers and people who had gas stations and donut shops and the stuff that all little towns do. It's north of LA by, 50, 60 miles, south of Santa Barbara, north of LA, right by Ventura kind of place. Yeah. So I saw this building and it looked like a Grecian temple kind of building. And I thought, well, that's unusual for Oxnard. So I got out, stopped. I do stuff like this. I don't know why I haven't figured it out. But I stopped the car and got out and went to the building to see what is this. And it was the town library, which I had never gone to visit before. And it was a town library built in 1938 or so. I don't know exactly when. I don't remember. Maybe in the 40s. By Andrew Carnegie, when he was on his put a library in every town in America kick. And this is what philanthropists do. They all have different ideas of what's important. And so he decided that reading was really important and that kids could have access to books, and that mothers who don't have money working in farming community, but I don't think he even probably knew he put one in Oxnard. He just set that program in motion and said, all right, guys, go set up all of these and spend this much money, and I want them all working and full of books. And in those days, you just filled them with books. You filled them with classical books. You filled them with encyclopedias. You filled them with dictionaries. You filled them with books that would educate people. You probably put the Constitution in every single place. You didn't concern yourself with whether or not you were teaching them to be something you wanted them to be. Yeah. That was the days when we just did the thing. And then we assumed there was a naturalness to nature by having a library, which had all the books that were legal to put in the library. And so that's what you did. You didn't think about, they're racist, so we have to put books in that are, he wasn't trying to manipulate consciousness. He was trying to grow it and let people have the free will, which he had, to direct that consciousness to the place that interested them. If they wanted to read the books in there on sociology that pleased him, then they would read them. If they wanted to read the ones that pleased somebody else, he didn't care.
Because I think that free will is so important, because I think there's a lot of that now where people are trying to sway people one way or another. And I think that energy, we pick up on it. And I think that's the reaction a lot of people have against being swayed, whether that's something political, whether that's put into films, it just...
Yeah, well, they're exercising their free will doing it. So to that respect, you may not agree with their message. You may think that transvestites should not be exposed to the public or some silly thing like that. But that's the point, is it's their free will, not yours. So we have to allow within the boundaries of what harms children. Basically, you're not a child, so someone exposing their thoughts to you is on you.
Yeah,
they're within boundaries that we all agree as a society are fair. We don't need people shout out on the corner shouting swear words like Tourette syndrome people have a trouble doing, because it just brings down the group experience that we're all sharing by living out in the same free space. But someone expressing their political view or their philosophical view or their religious view that throws a few explicitives into it here and there because they're passionate, that's expected of a civilized society, not some super virtuous Victorian society. If you're living in that level of classism, then you can stay home. You got the money to stay behind your gates and watch Sesame Street if you want to, or you can go out in the public square where people are discoursing with some passion, trying to transform and change humanity in a better way, and you can participate. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Free will is the ingredient next to love that I consider most important in the world. And it's primary. It's not second to love. It's primary. Because without free will, and we've seen this demonstrated, and Dar's seeing it right now demonstrated all over the world, in China and Russia and North Korea, and Iran, we're seeing places where expressing love or expressing your idea of God is, if you don't do it according to the people who are in charge, then you are punished. And so the denial of, and that means that you do not have the freedom to love. If you want to love, you have to have freedom to do it. And people who hate love, as the Nazis hated love, and as a group of people, they were working very hard to track down and eliminate those who love and have freedom, both. So what you discover about people who are being animated by the nature of evil is that they're not stupid. They can be extraordinarily smart, and they're very discriminating. They can see when you're lying. They can see when you're shading it and shadowing it. They know when you express beauty or harmony or any of the joyful energies that love produces. And if that's what they're looking for to stamp you out, then you're going to be in trouble if you try to express any of the engaging energies of love.
Yeah.
So we have looked at that, and we looked at letting those people take over the world, which they nearly did with the help of the Japanese and the Italians, but they didn't. And so that was broken. That desire to run the world through control of free will, according to how one or two or three or a group of people think it should be run, was decided by humanity. We chose freedom, the freedom to love what we love, to love what interests us. We didn't make it as a declaration of Christianity, which focuses dynamically on the energy of love, the presence of love itself, or on the presence of God as love. We didn't make that the issue of the war, although some people fighting it saw it that way. It was a matter of freedom, which is why America was so powerful in that war, because we had fought a war for freedom ourselves as a country, and said to the British, the British didn't, it wasn't tea or other issues with Britain that caused this war. They made a declaration. They had an equal sort of setup. You guys run America with your government, governing yourselves, and it's equal to our British government of you. You're a territory, but you're governing yourselves. And then they started overtaxing the situation. And then they passed a declaration in Britain that said, well, that's not really how it is. We have the last word, and we are the people who are actually in control of how you govern yourselves. That was the last straw, because that said, we're taking your free will and we're putting it over here where we want it to be. And when that happened, then we tossed the tea over the side of the boat and said, fuck you, bring it on. So we had a exercise in freedom that, and everybody sort of knew what they were fighting for. Whoever they were, and we didn't make it a religious war. That's why we didn't build it into the Constitution. Religion was not the issue. Those people who had a Christian religion or any other religion, there weren't that many in America that practiced it. We didn't even develop our own, although the transcendentalists grew out of us. But those people who had religions were fighting for the freedom to practice their religion without making it the religion of everybody else. The Catholics and the Christians, Protestants, they were sort of going at it tooth and nail. And so, but in England, it had run a different course. The Catholics were put into second place by Henry VIII as he created the Anglican Church, and he was the head of the Anglican Church, and he was the king. And to this day, King Charles is head of the Anglican Church, Westminster Abbey, and he's also king of the country for what it's worth these days. But he does have a power sort of behind the throne. And in those days, creating a parliament was secondary to the kings in those days. Now the parliament can kind of run on its own. So you see the slow struggle to bring this freedom out into the space.
Yeah.
But standing in the sunshine of love requires that kind of freedom. You have to tell everybody, hold on, back off. I'm gonna practice this for a minute. Now, you could do it while you're being stood up and shot in a firing squad. You could still practice standing in the sunshine of love.
Yeah.
That's sort of a, I only regret
that comes down to free will again. It's like you know, you're still in control of your consciousness and where you're standing within yourself.
Yeah, no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
That is a gift of life. A gift of life is your freedom. You have the freedom to say, go ahead, shoot me. Yeah. I only regret that I have one life to give for my country, sort of thing. But it's still freedom.
Yeah. But the circumstances can be hard.
Well, like they can be hard, and they often are. But that's when life gets interesting, is when the choices become difficult. But this idea that you have to take standing in the sunshine of love out into the public square and declare it is not necessary. You don't have to do that.
Right.
And people all over the world who are in other people's countries where they're not where Christianity is not the dominant religion, or the religion founded on love is not dominant, then you have to be careful about what you say and do and how much you animate yourself out in the public. Now, you can make yourself a sacrificial lamb, and you can run out in the street and declare yourself, I'm standing in the downpouring energy of love, and you can hold that vision. Like I said to you earlier, bring it. And if you're not still bringing it while we're having this conversation, then it's because you just said, fuck it, I don't care. And you let it go, and you go back to Seb's normal mental state and emotional state, which, deplorable as it may be, or mine or anyone's, if you turn off the light of love in order to just be your ego, you better do something fantastic, honey. I want to see a snake dance, or I want to see something that's really going to get me up on my feet, because I would think holding the downpouring light of love in the space would be better than what most people are animating. Now, if you do that while you're doing something else, that's even better. But that turns out to not be very easy to do for most human beings, because their ego, which is built upon the idea that love doesn't exist, doesn't have any idea how to do that. So you're actually faking it. If I ask you to hold the downpouring energy of love, you will do it. Right now, you're working to do it in your consciousness if you're being helpful, or you're just not. And I have very little way of telling the difference, which says something about you as much as it says something about me.
Right. Because
it should be obvious and apparent to anyone. And if it's not, then you've done too secure a job of locking that up inside of you. But we all have done that. Now, some people can turn it on. Performers, musical performers, artistic performers. And
like a Robin Williams, you know?
A Robin Williams turned on a clever intellectual animation, but behind that was a light of spirit in him. He had the spirit of comedy, which is a great spirit. It makes people laugh. And he had access to that. And when he lost access to that is when he finally came to the conclusion that I don't want to live anymore because I built my whole life on being that. And if I can't be that because I've done so many drugs, or I've burnt myself out doing this or that, then I don't want to live in the world. Well, that's, from my point of view, that's a selfish perspective, but I have contemplated suicide too many times myself to have any judgment about it. Life can get very difficult. It can get very hard when the thing that you love most recedes away from you based on choices you've made in your life. And you know it. He wasn't blaming anybody for what happened to Robin Williams. He knew he did way too much cocaine. He did way too much of these things. And his nervous system took way too much of a hit. And I spent 20 years in the music business, so I know how it is for performers when they're out on tour. I don't know how you feel on a Thursday night in Cincinnati, but if you're scheduled in front of 15 or 20,000 people, you got to go out there and give them the time of their life, because they paid $60 to come and see you, and they expect something that'll get them on their feet at the end of the show. And you just don't feel that way all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do. And when we look at somebody doing a performance on TV, like Robin Williams talking about golf, we see this brilliant performance, fully animated, but we don't know how he feels inside. And we haven't done it 28 days straight. It just wears you down. So pumping yourself up with caffeine will only go so far. Then pumping yourself up with cocaine becomes something that'll get you out on stage and get you through the night. And you don't feel good about it ever, because it's not standing in the sunshine of love and feeling it driving through you. But he may have never experienced that. I don't know. I didn't know, Robin. So I'm just saying that this is a future step for us, for humanity. And it's a future step we are at. It was a way future step a few thousand years ago. And now we're here. A lot of things have happened. The Greeks happened. The Babylonians happened. All these civilizations that came added something to the human quota, which allows us to get one step closer to being able to consciously stand in the sunshine of love, even though we're in the material kingdom where love doesn't show up very clearly. You look in the sky, you see the physical sun. You don't see the spiritual sun, nor do you see the central spiritual sun, which is shining forth with spirit. They are invisible to our eye, and therefore they're invisible to our consciousness generally. But being a unique being in the universe called a human being, human self is really underrated. There should be no human being in the world that has an inferiority complex. To be a human being is one of the most remarkable things in the universe, given the fact that you are packed with an enormous amount of powers, positive aspects and attributes. You can do stuff utterly improbable, but we haven't figured that out yet. And when Jesus showed up and did a lot of healing and turned water into wine and had a big time with the folks, it was so out of the box that the people at the time said, oh, we can't do that, so let's just kill this guy because he's making us look bad. So in a sense, it's really just a bridge too far. But that event established the greatest change that humanity ever experienced, which is it put perfect love inside every human being as a demonstrated reality. And killing the guy multiplied it. It like a virus. It spread it all out through humanity and gave everybody a presence with it, a piece of it. And for 2,000 years, we've been kind of growing that piece. You don't have to be part of any religion to grow love, because it's organic now. It's in the soil. It's in the air. It's in everything. And by tuning towards it, by tuning into it, taking all the personalities out, take God out, take Jesus out, take the tooth fairy out, take out the angelic presences, everything that lives in love, you can take those personalities out. Just put them aside for a minute and stand in the sunshine of it. And if you will do that, you will feel it. You will feel it impact your senses. It's real. It's genuine. And it's shining already on the earth. The only difference is Seb's not fully conscious of it. And making yourself fully conscious of it is your task.
Well, what does that look like to you, Dan? Someone who is fully conscious and standing in that sunshine of love, and how does that change that person's life?
Oh, well, the first time you do it, which is, today, when I ask you to stand in it with me for a few minutes, it doesn't bring a lot of obvious change to the room, to you. You look just as silly and dopey and Seb-like as you ever did.
Yeah.
But it is a difference, and it's a difference that's tangible. If it's tangible to you, then it's tangible. If it's knowable to you, then it's knowable. If you feel it, then it's sensual to everybody. So now that's an early stage of it. Now, if we take who's on the other end of the spectrum? Way out there is someone that's Jesus-like, a spiritual master of great maturity and development, which is where Jesus is now. Whatever he was 2,000 years ago, he sure as hell is not that now. He's that times 10 now, or 100 or 10,000. But if you've got him in the same video with us, people are going to be looking at him, not you and not me, not even Taylor if she shows up, because his constant, unremitting presence in the downpouring energy of love has been changing him gradually, daily, consistently, completely, ever since that first step. Ever since he hung out with John and the dove descended on him at the baptism, he's lit up. And he's been lit up ever since. Now, what he's been doing all this time, we have not been privy to. But he's not the only one doing it. See, we live in such a myopic world in the West that we think, well, there's just him and a few saints that are rotting away in the Vatican's coffins somewhere. And the fact that they don't rot away quickly means they've got sainthood or something. You see, we're not very bright about this shit. But the fact is that Jesus and the 12 disciples of his have been alive ever since. Now, up until now, none of them stayed alive in the bodies they were in at the time, including him. But that's not necessarily true of the future, because, and we don't even know whether that was necessary that they couldn't do that. We don't know that crucifying Jesus was something that he didn't have any power over. He had all the power over the material world that he needed, but he wasn't going to choose that. He chose to let love make that decision on terms of what would be the greatest good for the greatest number, which is how love decides big issues. What's the greatest good for the greatest number? Okay, well, good luck, hang out. And so now you have people who are like him, very much like him. Certainly, well, he was a unique man. He was what Abraham produced. The Abrahamic cycle, starting with Abraham in the Jewish culture. They had a culture before Abraham. So Abraham comes and he becomes the grandfather, sort of the Jewish people. And he's tested by God, Jehovah, Yahweh. He's tested by him to see if he's willing to take on the challenge of the next cycle for the Jewish culture. Well, he passed the test. He was willing to sacrifice his own son and was spared the problem of doing that at the last second, which is probably where we get this phone call from the governor kind of thing these days. But the point was, he demonstrated his willingness to produce, to be the father of all of the children and the neighbors and so on of the Jewish culture that produced Jesus. See, the outcome of everything that happened from Abraham down, and that's why you have a lot of begatting and how all of these, it's of interest to people, was of interest to people in the Bible. I forget which one, Matthew, I think maybe, I don't know, I don't know, Bible scholar, to keep track of these descendants. And there were, I think, 3 times 14. I think it was 14 generations and down to Daniel, and another 14 generations down to somebody else. Maybe Solomon, I don't know. And then another 14 generations to get to Jesus, 7th son of the 7th son kind of thing. And so finally, he arrives. and the opportunity for love to have a vehicle capable, consciously capable of being embodied with love in the same human form without going mad or cracking up or losing its center of focus. And by the way, putting aside all of its previous education and learning in order to stay in harmony with this step. This is like a brand new step for not just the Jewish culture, but for the whole of humanity. But it didn't go as smoothly as it could have. Most steps never do. But it was taken nevertheless. Jesus did not fail his mission. He was prepared properly, not by just himself, but by his experiences with every other human being he ever met, all the way back to before Adam and Eve or somewhere. So, and all of that amounts to is the realization and discovery that love is inside us, that this greatest gift of the galaxy, of the universe, of life itself from outside the entire physical universe, this greatest quality of life could live in a human being in its fullness. And this is Christ consciousness. That consciousness, not only could it live in him, it was available for him to learn. He and Christ consciousness were now living in the same medium, the medium of his consciousness. And at his free will, which he exercised, from that moment onward, he stayed true to his free will, committed to this demonstration, and stayed all the way through crucifixion, holding that union in himself. He was not going to give it up, no matter what anybody tried to do to make him. And they tried to make him. They came to him and bitched at him and complained at him, threatened him, while he was busy doing miracles and demonstrating what a person who has embodied love and working with love as a growth experience, what could happen as a result of that. And we don't see the smallness of his life. We don't see the songs he was singing around the campfire very often. We do see some very human acts, but they're mostly symbolic, like washing the feet of disciples and doing certain things all along the way with Magdalene and Mary and all the people that were around him. We see human acts which demonstrate what how he and love felt about things, how they acted towards things.
Yeah.
When they were trying to stone Mary Magdalene, he's like, well, hang on a minute. Let's take a look at this idea. And he didn't tell people what to do. He presented it in a way that let them choose to do what they want by asking them to check in with their own conscience. Now, if they'd been thugs paid to stone her, they wouldn't have cared what he thought or they thought. They didn't have any thought. But these weren't. These were citizens, Jewish citizens, who were persuaded by the laws of the Jewish law. I don't think the Romans gave a shit about any of that. I think prostitution was probably fine with them. I don't know, because there's money to be made in it. But there was a judgment being made here about people who participated in sex in a certain way with others. Although relieving someone else's sexual stress doesn't sound like it's a great crime, and I don't know that God has any personal opinion about it. And even though Paul later had a whole bunch of opinions about it, I don't think Jesus did. I think his opinions were that love is paramount. And I take that lesson to heart way more than I take Paul's lessons to heart about judging people by their actions. Judge the action if you must. I don't think I want to step in horse shit, but hey, if you want to step in horse shit, that's your shoe. But don't judge the people, because when you do that, you're not equipped to do that.
Yeah.
You're not,
and you separate yourself from them.
Well, of course, because I'm here at judging you. And when it's convenient to think that way, we do. But when it's inconvenient to think that way because it's Trump or it's Biden or it's a hooker or it's a pedophile or it's a pyromaniac, then we not only want to judge the bastards, we want to kill them. So So we carry judgment into action, and then we stone them, just like they were going to do with Mary. And I don't, my inner ear listening in the kingdom of love doesn't hear Jesus or the Christ or any of those spiritual guys doing that. And if they're not doing it, why am I doing it?
Yeah.
You see, so I take the lesson to heart. I can't find a reason to argue with the idea that was portrayed in that particular moment, because I've got a few sins on my own page that make Mary Magdalene look like the tooth fairy. I don't know what she had done other than treat a few friends well, but having been a Marine in Vietnam, I'll challenge her any time. It's a rough world out here, and we make mistakes in it that we can't take back. And if we don't learn how to get past judgment and get on to being able to stand in the downpouring sunshine of love, then we're all lost. So from my point of view, that's a primary importance. And because you can do it, you must do it.
Yeah.
A lot of people that we talk to, if we put out a podcast about love, don't know how to do it. They haven't learned how yet. And so you don't have to do this. If you want to do this, I'll help you do it. I'll help you figure out how to start that flow in your life, and then help you learn how to hold that flow continuously. And I'm not going to judge you if you get tired and go, I held it for 30 seconds and then I couldn't hold it any longer. Okay, but that's 30 seconds. That's a huge amount of time from zero, because love is a miraculous power. It can do an amazing amount of things. I don't think Jesus held his hands over those jugs of water more than about 30 seconds. He might have, just because he wasn't sure if it was going to work. It was the first miracle. So he's probably overworking it. He's probably cooking it, and then he's cooking it again, and then he's cooking it again, until somebody finally says that's good enough. It's either wine now or we're all screwed. So at some point he just said, okay. But you're sensing, you're feeling, you're standing in that sunshine of love, and he's feeling it flowing through. I don't know that he's holding his hands over the water. It makes a nice picture in a movie with Jesus, but he might have been doing it from out in the front room. I don't know. But they did take jugs and they did fill them up with water, and they brought them in before him, and he looked at those jugs and said, this better work, because he wasn't ready. He told his mom, I'm not ready for this. This is not, my time hasn't come. It's not I haven't got a manual. I'm just here. Yeah, love's here. So he had to turn to that inside of him, which had joined him, and say, okay, I don't have this talent. I was not turned into a magician anywhere where they could do this. So you're here. Let's see if we can do this together. And because he tried, obviously, he stepped in and said, okay, I'll give it the Jesus treatment. You give it the love treatment. And let's see if the two of us can cook up something for these people that has never been done before. And it worked. And that kind of gave him some encouragement to go start healing people that were dying from dread diseases. There are some serious freaking diseases in those days. Leprosy was not, if your friend had leprosy, you weren't really around about hugging them. Let me give you a hug, poor guy, because then you're dying from leprosy soon. So this was a tough time for this kind of a gig, but he entered it and he went on with it, and he did a great job with it up to a certain point when they cut him off. But all of that was standing in the downpouring energy of it, moment to moment. And I think that Jesus, he was lit up like a Polish wedding, right? As they say. There's just, it wasn't something that he had to look around for. It's coming off him. He is lit up, and he's lit up because there was no fault in him. He had overcome the desires of material kingdom. And that was the 40 days in the desert and the temptations of Christ. That's when those things are laid before him and say, look, you've got a unique set of skills. You want to be the world king. You want to run everything. You want to be the guy that has all the wealth and the fame, and they all kneel at your feet. And he said, no, I don't think I want that. Thanks. So he said no to that, knowing he could actually have it. If I say to you, do you want to win the $1 billion lottery? It's easy to say, no, I don't care. Unless you know I'm holding a winning ticket and I can give it to you and you can take it and cash it in. Well, then you're up against it because you start to think what I could do with it. Oh, shit. And then you realize, well, the first thing I'm going to do is go get a new set of clothes and a Ferrari because I got to look the part. Then after that, I'll have a good steak dinner and call up a couple of old girlfriends because I got to have some comfort in my life. And then we can talk about what we're going to do for the rest of the human race. So money is a huge persuasion. Material success is a big persuasion. Being the king is good. So, but he said no to all that because he had no desire in him for it personally. And he had, what's his name, that black-hearted bastard who was king at the time. Remember, the Romans were in charge, but they weren't king of the Jews. That was Herod. Herod was the king. And Herod was the guy that sent out his little army to kill the firstborn sons of everybody during this little time window when the Messiah was going to be born because he didn't want any competition. Now, that's kind of a hard-edged guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Jesus taking on kingship, being king of the world, would have put him up against Herod. But he would have won because he would have been the difference. You know, Putin's running Russia because he's a tough son of a bitch. He's a tough materialist. Xi took over China and changed the constitution of the government after Mao so that he could be in charge of all three branches of the government and for life. He did that because he's that strong. So he was equal to Putin. And so that's one of the reasons that the strength of Trump scares people, because people that have that kind of strength generally end up totalitarian assholes in whatever country they grow up in. They start out talking a good line, but they end up taking everyone's freedom away and telling everybody what to do.
Yeah.
And you could see that Trump, were he of that ilk, would end up doing the same thing. And it's a temptation. It's not something that he would necessarily start out with, but it's a temptation in his life because now he's got a lot more power. He's got a lot of people on his side. He's in charge of the military. He's the head of the government. But he hasn't got the kind of mind for that. He hasn't got the kind of mind that can engineer taking over the Constitution and changing it easily. And he doesn't have friends around him who will help him do that because he likes different kind of people. Elon Musk is never going to help him change the Constitution to put him in charge like a king. Neither is any of the people that he's got. They're doing things that they think will benefit the American constitutional ethic. So he may or may not be that guy, but he's the guy that he is. And so Jesus didn't want to be that guy. So he didn't want to be in conflict with Herod. And Herod killed his buddy John the Baptist later on, not that much later, because he's been killed before Jesus is crucified, and he only had 3 years on his watch after he got that. So it's a shame. And they were like cousins or something. I don't know if they were. Probably, I think I heard they were cousins, but I don't know the lineage of these people. But they liked each other.
John the Baptist and Jesus, or John the Baptist? Okay.
Yeah. I think they might have been cousins. They were certainly childhood friends. John was a little older, maybe 4 years or 5 years or something. I don't know. Somewhere a little older, I think, which made John about 35 and Jesus about 30. So something like that going on. I don't know. But he didn't get in a fight over those things. And he was a pretty prescient guy. He probably saw it all coming. He saw pretty much everything coming. As he told them all, you're going to have me around forever. In the Garden of Gethsemane is when he saw this isn't going to work out the way we would all like it to. So we're going to have to kick the ball down the field. And that meant him being crucified, whether he wanted it or not. And I don't think and I don't know, I don't like to speculate on what Jesus knew or didn't know because I'm not in his class. But he'd made the choices that before him harmonized, kept the harmony with love, kept the human race in its best chance for getting something beneficial, and chose forward. Yeah. And right to the end, when he finally said it's finished, with the relief that I've done it. I've done my job. And if that's not enough, then it's on love because I gave it my all. Now, that's all done standing in the downpouring energy of it. And that means that love is outside of us in the universe, shining its sun, wherever that is. And I think that it's in every star to some degree. The esoteric world will tell you there's 3 suns in our solar system, and they're not in the same spot, which is like telling you that your soul is not exactly where you're sitting, and neither is your spirit. You have all 3. You have the sun of spirit in you, you have the sun of the soul in you, and you have you in you. And our solar system has a radiant physical sun, and it also has a spiritual sun, which is radiating love to the entire solar system. Now, that means it's pouring down on us already, but it's also inside of you. Now, that's a strange conundrum to the material mind. How can that be? How does that work? How does that work? Well, the material rules don't govern the laws of love. The science of love is like quantum mechanics. It lives in a universe of its own and does its process. The fact that you don't experience it that way with your material senses and your 3-dimensional construct that the brain gives you by looking at geometry doesn't mean it's not true. So the spiritual sun pouring out its love into the universe, that can make sense to us. And if there's millions of them pouring out from all the other suns, that would fill the whole universe with this wonderful energy of the soul of love. Okay, that's probably true. But the fact that it's also inside of you is a very different construct of thinking. How is that possible? Well, if you look inside yourself, like I said, go inside yourself and bring it. And it will be that will be more visible to you faster than looking out in our solar system to see the spiritual sun. Because when that becomes clear to you inside yourself, you'll then be able to see it outside of you. Now, a lot of spiritual teachers in the East, in the Buddhist line or other places that were spiritually inclined, like a Rudolf Steiner kind of guy or somebody, will tell you that in the past, humanity could see all of that. We could interact with all of that because we weren't as crystallized as we are. We weren't as, see how that's what happens when you tap matter. Things rock and roll. We had much more fluid interaction with the universe, and the actual spiritual life of beings in the universe that share the universe with us could be seen and interacted with and listened to. And Jehovah, if he's speaking to you, you could say, sure, I get it. And you realize you're talking to some enormous being that is way more qualified than you to tell you don't eat the yellow snow. So you say, okay, I'll do that. And then later, if it turns out to be a good idea, you make it part of your daily stuff, and then you teach it to your children and you go on with your life. But later, when that faded out and became just a memory, and even the Delphi missionaries in Greece couldn't make contact anymore with those inner beings, Then we wrote down about them. We recorded messages and we worked out ceremonies like tossing the bones and doing I Ching and casting astrologies. We started using systems to do it. And then we created symbols for all of those things. And we created a zodiac. And there was a time when astrology was just the everyday communication between the really smart people and those beings. Hmm. And then when that communication, things change. Go figure. So when that went away, then we just reduced those beings because we didn't like losing those things that help us survive. And primitive man was primitive from an intellectual point of view, but he wasn't primitive from his ability to realize big living being when he saw one. So when that goes away, we reduce it to symbols, we reduce it to a mythology memory, and then we think that the Greeks just invented Hercules. We don't believe that he actually lived or did anything worthwhile, when in fact he did live, and he did one of the most enormous worthwhile things that humanity's ever had the opportunity to share with a human being. So the myths, as Joseph Campbell was attempting to present, myths don't mean they never happened. It just means they happened so long ago, and the circumstances of the materialization of our world around us, it arguably and obviously, and science will support it, this used to be a swampy sort of wet, kind of spongy place. And we were swampy and sort of wet and spongy ourselves, probably back in the early days. And now it's become dried out and crystallized and very rocky and hard-edged. And now we don't know how to look in ourselves and see love, because we have a psychology based on I am me. I'm James Daniel. I'm whatever I think I am. And you're Seb. And you're not me, and you know that I'm not you.
Yeah.
And you have some vague idea that in love, we're all one thing, but you don't like me well enough for that to be true. So you just keep that as an idea. And now, if she's really that good looking, you might like the girlfriend to do that, to be one with you. But then that takes away the joy of just pounding the shit out of her on a Saturday night, because she's other than you. She's something you're want to merge with or to become one with through your sexual appetite for it. But if that actually happened, that would be the end of it. Then what? Well, then we just repeat it for fun. So this idea of actually becoming one with another being completely is just an intellectual idea that we don't really want to pursue. But you see, love's serious about it. It already identifies with you as part of itself. So it's already all in. And when you're all in with it, the sunshine of that is going to flow into you and light you up like a beacon light. And it'll shine out of you into the material world. And some people just have that light going on in them, and the church calls them saints. And Yogananda was kind of like that. He was a very saint-like guy, a wonderful guy. And others that we've had, they don't have to be anything philosophical or religious. I think we have more women that have kind of had that kind of energy coming out of them. And some guys, I mean, Jesus obviously was lit up. So if you're going to progress, if this humanity is going to survive, I have no argument with anybody's philosophy or idea or belief or whatever they want to tell the world. I don't mind, but I'm a thinking man. I've watched the world since the 60s intelligently and logically and interacted with it, and I see where we're going. And I know we're in a spiritual crisis. And I know that the spiritual presences that live and share this world with us, including love, and many others that live in love and have for a long time, they recognize that humanity is at a critical point of decision making. We have to make some conscious choices here that are going to have large and long impact on us. And if we make them in the direction of love and include it in our daily driver, everything is going to benefit. Disease will go down to almost nothing. Harmony will break out all over the world, and goodwill will begin to grow countries into each other, and we'll all adjust our constitutions to account for each other's needs. We'll share the resources of the planet. We'll start to respect the animals and lives that live on this planet with us. And we will begin to realize that there is a significant energy coming from life that just produces that reward by the nature of life itself. Life loves, period. It loves. That's its nature. Well, we might as well take some of that in. And if you're acting against that nature, you're acting against the very nature that animates the cells in your body. And if you do that for a period of time, you're going to end up with disease, because you're acting against the energy of love as life in you, to the point where it casts a shadow. It starts to distort the way things should be. And it can take on as specific a condition as you need it to, based on the choices you're making against it. And then you can think that you get West Nile virus from a mosquito, but in actual fact, that's not where it comes from. It comes from your rejection of love in a very specific emotional way that produces the necessity for that in your life. And it's a group energy that we're all doing. So mosquitoes are very convenient for spreading it around to everybody. But not everybody. 5 of us can go down to wherever that West Nile virus is breaking out right now, and 1 of us might get it, 2 of us might get it, but 2 or 3 of us won't get it. Well, why not? We're all going to get bit by mosquitoes. The bastards are everywhere. So how do we not get it? Well, they didn't have that virus in them. Well, why didn't they? Because it's everywhere. Well, it's just not yours. You don't have that coming, at least this trip. Maybe next trip you will. And it's one of the things that give doctors immunity in a contagion. They can be in the midst of everybody having typhoid around you and never get typhoid, because their focus is on healing everyone else, and they don't have in them the systemic necessity to experience typhoid. And you go like, what good is typhoid? What's typhoid going to teach me? Hell, I don't know. But I know that typhoid knows. In other words, the nature of love is the lessons that are in it are in it, whether you see them or not. And you may not think you gained that lesson, but if you have the experience of dying from typhoid, then you're going to have learned something, whether you know it now or not. It might take a long time for that to become a crystallized realization in you, but love can work with time. And my point is that all these dark assets that we've produced in our experience as human beings that are coming towards us out of the jungles and out of the mountains and out of the stream and the rivers and the labs in Wuhan, taking the downpouring energy of love and filling ourselves with it consciously in an attempt to produce the antidote to all dis-ease in humanity is a really good idea. Maybe it won't work. Maybe I'm off the beam here. Maybe Jesus was off the beam. Maybe all those spiritual masters who are masters of love are off the beam. But having lived through 80 years of experience, 60 of them consciously with these people all over the planet, I don't think they are off the beam. I think they're the few among us who know what the hell's really going on. And it doesn't matter whether they're Buddhists who believe in love and compassion and how to perfect the mind to surrendering itself to love and compassion like the Buddha did, or whether they're Maitreya who is embodying Christ consciousness on behalf of humanity and preparing to come in front of humanity with it, or Jesus working somewhere in the world serving humanity's needs with Christ consciousness in him, because he's had it ever since, I don't think it matters. But I know that all of them are doing what those who have stood in that downpouring love long enough finally do. They just start acting with it completely. It makes their life so much more real because it brings them into the reality of love as life, as an expression of life. And it brings them into the consciousness of God in whatever form that is through it. Because Marty, what's Marty up to? Oh, he wants to come in here and join us. That's the trouble when you start throwing that energy around. Pretty soon animals want it too. And there's plenty of it for them if we could not be selfish about it.
Yeah.
Marty's got to be where I am, otherwise he gets a little crazy. But he's not the best thing to have in the room with you. Marty, quiet down out there. Hold on. Hold on. You just stop that. You know better than that. Yeah. You can't just bully your way into places, buddy. And Marty is not exactly the biggest dog in the world. He's half Chihuahua, half Jack Russell. He's a dog that should never have been created. But once he's been created, he's ours.
Yeah.
So, standing in the downpouring evidence of love is now having worked on this for a little while, having held this sort of shower going on for a while.
Yeah.
How do you feel about continuing it?
Well, positive. I mean, this holding this space feels to me the most important thing I can do. At the same time, I know how easily I can get distracted from that.
Oh, hell, you're like a mouse with a cheese next door. We all are. That's what human life is about, being distracted from love, because we built an ego designed to just abandon it in a second because we don't see its value. It's not concrete to us. If all the lights in New York went out, if you stopped holding your hands in the air, then you'd think, oh, shit, what are you doing holding your hands in the air? Well, because that keeps all the lights in New York on. I don't believe that. Well, okay, take a look. And all the lights go out. And they go, oh, okay, put your hands back up. We get it. Now, but it's hard to hold your hands up continuously because it's a physical effort. Well, telling the brain to do something that seems unusual to you, holding a limerick in your mind all day while you do your regular job, would be difficult to do. But you see, love is already here. The sun is already shining. You don't have to turn it on. We have to turn on the light of love in our consciousness. It's already radiating out everywhere. But your I nature has created the illusion of you being separate from the sun, the physical sun. So you're keeping that illusion going, the illusion of I. And because you think it's separate from love as well, that's not there either. So we've built a prison of our own I-ness. And your free will has joined you thinking that I is pretty cool, so I'm not giving that up. I like I. It somehow feels right. And it is right, by the way. It's we that have to grow it up into something that can do more than it can currently do. And you don't do that by rejecting it. You do it by growing it into love. You want to add love to your I-ness. So instead of just will and intelligence, which is what an intellect is running on, will and intelligence need to add love to the picture. And at first, it feels awkward. At first, it's like, okay, I'm imagining this. Well, no, you're not imagining it. The image-making power of your soul connected to you is linking you to a beginning involvement with it. Let's be more specific. But I is how we think of ourselves, so I'm doing it. And if it seems hard for me, then I'm going to quit doing it the moment you turn your back on me, because I don't see its benefit to anybody else. I was watching that 8.4 earthquake going on in the Russian peninsula. And did you see the little bit where the guys are in surgery?
No.
No, there's a camera in the surgery, because that's how you do it with surgery. So the camera's on, and here's this guy stretched out on the table, and they've got all the sheets on, and there's three guys around him. The guy that's got him unconscious, and the two doctors that are in there with their tools working away on him. And he's face up, so they're down in his heart or his belly or somewhere, and the earthquake starts. Well, to the credit of the three guys, they didn't go anywhere. They just leaned over to protect the patient, anchored themselves to the ground, and said, "Oh shit." And it was an 8.4, 15 miles away. That's the biggest earthquake ever recorded, or 8.8, the biggest earthquake ever recorded. I think 10 on the Richter scale is the high as they go, and that's an explosion. So when you get up into the eights, and every number up in the Richter scale is a square of the number below it. The number multiplied by itself makes up the next level. So they get bigger and bigger, and it's almost at the point of complete destruction at wherever the earthquake is going. So that's to their credit. And their credit is that they grabbed hold of each other and said, "We're riding this out. We're not bailing out of here." Now, any one of them could have said, "I'm out the door because the roof might come down on me. And good luck, John. We'll be back in a minute if we can help you." So that's what love does. That's not just doctors not wanting to quit. It's the nature of beings that have a commitment in themselves to helping other human beings and don't take it lightly. And it doesn't matter whether they're Russian or Bulgarian or Alaskans. It doesn't matter. It's real, and they honor it because it involves the life of their patient that's been put in their care. So when you're holding the downpouring light of love in the space, now they're not doing that. They're probably not thinking about love at all, but they're thinking about helping this guy, and they're concentrating on doing it all the way through the cycle of the operation, and they're hoping they'll get finished with the operation before he dies, because he can only have his chest open and be operated on for so long, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So they're in their own time cycle, and they're not willing to quit that. They're working on it. So those kind of people bring love into the world all the time by doing the job they're doing when it benefits others. What we're talking about is, while you're doing that, you're holding this energy in harmony with what you're doing. So you're not just helping this guy, you're healing this guy. Well, you're not, but love is. You see, love is the ultimate healer of him, because the absence of love created whatever disease they're trying to fix in him. So when human beings can do that, when we learn how to hold the energy of love, along with doing a podcast, mowing the lawn, healing surgery on somebody, fighting a war, whatever the hell you're doing, hold the downpouring energy of love while you do it. Yeah. Then we will train ourselves to live in two worlds at the same time. Now, you already live in the kingdom of love. That's what the soul nature is. It's that part of you that is growing up there while you're growing up here. And every human being, in my experience, is a magnificent soul. There aren't any beginner souls. There aren't any newly minted souls. I mean, there might be some somewhere, one or two or something, but the general role of the universe is that it gives birth to a bunch of souls, and then it grows those souls up into the human beings that they're going to be, if we're talking about the human kingdom. And in the process of doing that, millions of years may go by. But those same created beings are going to get more and more human, more and more mature, more and more able, and turn into magnificent creatures of incredible powers and great blessing to whatever space they're in. Now, that's what we're on the way to. But we'd better include love as a conscious part of our energetic element, as a part of our reality while we're going there, or it'll never appear.
Yeah.
And we have rejected that and ignored it and put it off so long that we've created what they call the dark sphere, which is all the misdirected energy being hostile to love, that now attacks us in these forms of these diseases and weather and all the other crap that humanity's struggling against. If you want to end these weapons of mass destruction that humanity's turning on itself, bring down and hold the energy of love in your life. Just make that a permanent part of your conscious contribution, period.
Yeah.
No judgment, just hold it.
I think also, it's we all can visualize and imagine what it looks like for someone who is fully conscious and alive in that, a Jesus-like figure. And I think that can be a little daunting. It's a little daunting for me, to try and imagine myself being as alive to love as a being like that. But I know that just even the smallest step makes profound change within myself and to others. So it's like just increasing that amount just a little bit, and staying with that, and recognizing the importance of that is a profound thing. And it's just those little incremental steps. And I don't know how important it is to do it fast, or if there's people that can just go straight in and open right up to that. But I know that small steps make big changes.
Always there's people who are idiot savants. There are people who just open their arms and give out love because it's so alive in them, and no one told them not to, and it feels good. So they're just putting out love. And that doesn't make them geniuses at anything else. They could be very much so, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are. And maybe that's what autistic people do. I don't know. The universe is filled with mystery. And the mysteries of love in the human race are amazing and multiple. And every day we get a chance to see it around us. And every day we see the destruction or the negativity, and we assign that to bad people or bad forces or something hopefully other than ourselves, and never take full responsibility for what's in our life and say, what did I do to make this show up in my life? And I don't care whether someone backed out of their driveway and ran over your dog or backed into your car. What did you do to produce that in your life? That should be the first conscious question you raise, so that love can tell you, oh, this is what you did. Now, you don't know when you did it. No human beings that I know. I know a lot of people who believe in reincarnation and all of that stuff. But if I ask any of them, how old are you? How old are you really? When was the first creation of the individuality that is your human spirit? And when did that individuality create your human soul? And when did that human soul create your first incarnation as a human being on this planet or some other place? Do you have any idea how old you are? I have never had anybody even come close to how old I think most of the human race actually is. Now, we're not all the same age, because some of humanity is so old, it was in a previous incarnation, if you want to refer to it that way, of our solar logos, which was a previous lifetime of our planetary logos, because they kind of come together. If your solar system is going to go out and then come back again, and God knows how long, it's going to take the planets with it. And it's going to take us with it too. So if we're working our way along as humanity on some planet in our solar system, and the universe runs out, and somebody turns all the lights out, then like the Dodger baseball team, you're going to have to come back tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon and start a new ball game. Maybe play 2 out of 3 with Cincinnati. Well, I don't know. That's kind of how the universe works. And so I think some of humanity is that old. And the mistake that is the fault of humanity, or the choice of humanity, or the opportunity of humanity that cost us our relationship to being conscious of love is that old. Original sin, original act against love, against consciousness, against conscience. Somewhere or another, we broke our connection to it. And that set a problem in motion for us, which we have been working on and working out. Now, in the working on and working out of that problem, I believe we are working on and working out an even greater reward. Now, I have a minority thought about that, but I'm not by myself in that thought, but with most of the human beings that are on the earth, I am. But think about it. Life is a magnificent thing. I mean, it's built, sustaining, developing an entire cosmic physical universe out of itself. And it's doing great. We're not doing particularly great, but we're way better than we used to be.
Yeah.
But right now we're in crisis because we haven't turned to one of the great aspects of life, which is love, and said yes to it. We've been saying no to it. And now we've got to say yes to it and take the consequences of all of the lies we've told. I mean, it's like all of these conspiracy theories that are coming to light. Everybody watched Kennedy's assassination. Well, everybody was alive. I was alive. I watched this Kennedy assassination and watched the Warren Commission formed by a government that was theoretically looking into the death. And I watched all the jury-rigged bullshit about it all and watched Ruby execute this poor hapless idiot that got pulled into it. Lee Harvey Oswald, who couldn't have hit the broadside of a barn with that Lee Enfield rifle. I have fired a Lee Enfield rifle. It was one of the major rifles of the British during the Second World War. But with iron sights, hitting a moving target like him going down that thing is not something you're going to set up an entire execution for and have much chance of actually pulling it off. But somehow, miraculously, it got pulled off, didn't it? And a bunch of bullets got fired and 2 or 3 of them got lost in the findings. And no commission could have been put together that wouldn't have asked a lot of serious questions. And only today, after all this time, is somebody saying, well, you know, we do have all this stuff. They had that stuff then, basically. And they certainly had guys that were smart enough to say, I think this is something fishy going on here. And because it involved the CIA and it involved the mafia and it involved Cuban patriots and it involved God knows who else pulled into this massive execution of a sitting president and one of the most popular human beings on earth, it's a pretty big cover-up. But yet cover it up they did. And the rest of us swallowed it not favorably, because I don't remember a day in my life where I ever thought I was being told the truth. But there was nobody there that I had any faith in giving me the truth. I actually liked Kennedy. And I didn't trust anybody else at the time, still don't. But I didn't have anything I could do about it. I can't go there and sit with a Warren Commission. They put a bunch of very official people around the table that said, yeah, this is how it went. So believe the story. And all of these conspiracies like this, and believe me, there is a list of them that are way longer than you would think.
Yeah.
And the excuses that we use to start the Vietnam, to start the war with the weapons of mass destruction, to do all those things, that is 9/11 a government conspiracy, or is it? Well, it's somebody's conspiracy, and I don't think we know yet who had a vote in that. And so every country does this, every culture has done it. But as these things are revealed to us, we lose heart, we lose faith in the structure. Well, we should realize that we've built our civilization, even the American civilization, which is a worldwide network of agreements that we carry out on behalf of each other. is filled with evil and negativity and lies. No one is holding a primary relationship to the kingdom of love while they act on everything they do. Now, maybe the new pope is, I don't know. I don't know him well enough to know. So what can I say? I don't want to make a judgment, but I don't believe that about all of those cardinals. I know some of them are just lying, scheming, whatever they are. I don't know. I know that it's filled with human beings doing human things. And when you're made with Hobson's Choice, which was a great movie that, what was his name that starred in that movie?
Charles Laughton.
Charles Laughton, yeah. Charles Laughton studied in that movie. And it's a wonderful movie about having no choice at all. Hobson's Choice was one of those choices. And it was a guy, poor hapless guy, brilliant movie as a study. Hapless guy that had all these gorgeous daughters. And he's stuck with these problems that have no real solutions to them, that aren't going to be painful. So that's where we are. But choose love, and you're pushing all of this out into the space to be seen and recognized, because love will not tolerate lies against it. It will eventually work its way up and push them out into the light. And this is the biblical comment about truth being shouted from the rooftops.
Does the truth coming out, does that help release it? Does that, because it creates a lot of, especially with certain things that come up, that the truth comes out about it, it can cause a lot of reaction in people and
it
backlash.
Will, but here's the point. I agree. But what it is it's well, I'm looking for the right word for what that produces, which is disillusionment. It's taking away illusions that you already believe in. And Maya, illusion, and glamour are the distortions of evil that keep love trapped out of your consciousness. So, is it a bad feeling when you realize your dad's a serial killer? Yes, that's a bad day, because you thought he was the great guy that played ball with you, and he was. He was a guy that threw the ball to you and took you fishing and did all these things, but he was tiptoeing off every so often to murder somebody.
Yeah.
So that shatters an illusion that we had about our parent, that he was the good guy that we thought he was. Well, not every dad is a serial killer, but none of us are perfect. So disillusionment is removing the illusion or the glamour or the Maya that we have towards other parts of life around us that we have been inexperienced with. So we've formed these fantasies about it. And we formed fantasies about Biden, that he was a healthy, functioning guy, because they lied. They gaslighted the shit out of us, because they saw that as the best way to get what was needed for humanity or for America or whatever they were dreaming of. Well, love would not tell that lie. It won't support gaslighting America. It won't support illusion and glamour, even if you think it's for the right purpose. It would take a different route. It would say, this guy's only about 20% there, but he's the best guy we got, and the rest of us supporting him are on that team, and so we want you to support him, and we'll prop him up best we can. And when he's gone, we'll put the vice president in. Something like that. But they didn't take that route. They took a route of deception, as they did with the collusion thing. That was a deliberate route of deception, and everybody was in on it that was in on it. Some people chose to believe it because they didn't like Trump, and it was easy to believe that the guy had his thumb on the scale and was making the meat weigh more than it was. But those are the illusions and glamours that beset us from each other. We do this to each other, and everybody's got a certain type and brand. There's lots of different ways of reacting to life. And in America, we've just polarized it between conservatives and liberal, between capital and labor. And that's where our problems separate. But love loves capital. I can't get my hand in there. Love loves capital and love loves labor, because it loves the product of capital and labor, because it takes both to produce goods. You're going to have to go down to the bank and get a loan if you're going to make donuts. If you want to make 5,000 donuts, you're going to need some money. Now, then you got a bunch of people to run around and sell those donuts to other people, and you'll get that money back. But along the way, you're going to drop some donuts, you're going to lose some donuts, and maybe not everybody will buy the donuts, because donuts only last for a couple of days. You got to get them all sold the first day. So capital is at risk. And that's not nothing, because somebody earned that capital through doing past labor. That's what capital is. It's the product of labor. Now, you can show it in all other kinds of lights, and you can talk about it in other ways, but that's basically what it comes down to. So someone who's accumulated some capital has taken over somebody's labor somewhere and given it to themselves. Now, maybe they didn't do it rightfully, which is a lot of where capital comes from. Maybe they took that money somehow through an agreement that wasn't fair. Maybe it's the mafia with all that capital. Maybe it's drug lords trying to launder their money. But it's still capital, and it still came from people putting out effort. And somebody bought the drugs. Somebody supported the enterprise. And it weren't always but love. They weren't always pursuing love. But they are all loved. This is something that we have to come to the understanding of. Love doesn't love anyone, anywhere, less than anyone else. No one else, anywhere, is not loved one tiny bit less. And there's a reason for that, because love perfects people to love. It takes you at your imperfections, which Seb has a few. I've got a few. Taylor may not have very many, but the rest of us are pretty spotty. So love introduced into ourselves, by ourselves, taking it down into us, is going to bring us to perfection. Perfection means all of that is not love pushed out of our nature. But we have to do that with our own free will, which means you have to take every step of it. And standing in a downpouring love, as Seb, is not taking that in. You're not soaking it all up like a sponge. It would change you too fast. You would become somebody you don't recognize. I mean, you know that St. Francis of Assisi was probably a really lovely guy, but he had been to their crusades a couple of times. The guy had been around the blocks. I mean, and he was the son of a wealthy family, and he had his stuff too. So you don't know what you would be like, free of everything that is not love in you. You probably would hate that as an abrupt transformation. Now, did it happen to Paul or Saul on the road to Damascus, where he becomes Paul, the disciple, to replace Judas? Yeah, he went through that experience, and he was blind for 3 days. He went through hell and comes out the other side and says, wow, I was wrong. I was completely wrong about everything. I've been putting these people to death when I should have been giving them life. And now I've got to make up for that, because he was an extraordinarily spiritual-minded guy. Well, most of us aren't that spiritually minded. We aren't on a crusade like that. But rarely it does happen. Somebody does come to that. Jesus did it. And maybe at the time it was much easier to do. The other guys that were hanging out with him, they questioned it. Doubting Thomas, he didn't buy into any of it until at a certain point he shows up and puts his finger in the holes where he was crucified. And then Thomas says, well, geez, I was probably about to give up the doubting part. And in addition to that, this tongues of flame come down on them later on after the crucifixion thing. This shows up, and then they're energized bunnies, and they've got spirit inside them and the Pentecost energy going, and so they get the work done. But we don't know what that meant. We aren't experiencing that. And there are some Christian preachers who, like Wigglesworth, who tried to live that energy, and they did some pretty bizarre things and had some pretty bizarre success because they were striving to live that depth of Christian identification with spirit and will and drive out all questioning. But those are extreme examples of people trying to be something that they could be if they had the capacity to just take it on. But the rest of us have a different method in front of us, which works really well, which is accept yourself exactly the way you are, because that's what you are demonstrating. You haven't got any more or less. So you might as well accept Seb for the worn shoe that he is, because it's upon that that you can build a spiritual foundation.
Yeah.
And in another part of your thinking about yourself, take on this lighted sunshine of love and let it in. Now, that doesn't mean abandon everything you are. Just let it work in you.
Yeah.
Don't push the river. Yeah, let it do what it's going to do. And this way you live a dual life. This is the dual life of a Christian, true Christian, not everybody who's in a church, where you accept with humility the personality you are. And Jesus demonstrates this by washing the feet of his disciples. He's accepting them 100% for exactly the imperfect people they are, loving them exactly as they are, and trusting that them taking love into themselves in combination with them will produce the result that leads them and us onward into a greater expression. Now, if you're a really enthusiastic person and you do this, you'll become a very enthusiastic expression of taking on love and living full of energy and full of passion and full of joy and all of that. And if you're not that energetic, then you'll take it on and quietly go on about the business of being an accountant for the mafia or whatever you're doing in your life, or the music industry, worse, or somebody else, and you'll just go on being an accountant, holding love as your inner future. And it will grow with you, and you'll get better at being whatever you are. You might even get better at singing in the choir at church, or being in your Rotary Club, or just hanging out with your buddies down at the bar. It doesn't matter to love.
Yeah.
What matters to love is loving, not judging, loving. And anyone who takes it on gets the perfecting benefit of love in them. And it's going to work. You're not going to perfect yourself except through the application of love to you. That's your part of the job. But love will do that, because love has what? Transformation. See, that's a quality of love. That's not accidental. That's a property love possesses. So when it's in you, it's applying transformational application. Your blood's not going to turn into wine. I've tried that myself. It wears off. But love is working on every cellular product. Every aspect of your being is being transformed and transmuted and unified with all other beings of love. Those are huge steps of change. So don't think you're going to make those steps in 1 minute. But the advent of love to your life as a conscious co-creator with you is a huge positive benefit. Right from the first minute. Whatever problems you got in your life that you're trying to solve, love is going to help you solve them because of your commitment to hold yourself in that downpouring energy. Now, you may not have any great problems in your life, except you're not getting enough sleep with the job you got, and you got no permanent girlfriend, and you're things like that.
Yeah.
But they're not the end of the world. But
No.
a lot of people are in trouble, real trouble, because the world civilization is failing. And I'm of the opinion, and I'm not a prophet, but I'm of the opinion that the future of humanity and the next civilization that we're going to build together must be founded on the reality of this downpouring energy of love.
Yeah.
I think we've come to that place.
Yeah.
It comes
I
under
think
the...
we spoke in one of the previous podcasts of how the time of humanity making these great steps without love has kind of come to an end, and that we believe that we're at the place now where no great step of humanity is going to be made forward to progress, to grow, without consciously building love into it. And I think that's very true. I really do think we're at that place.
Oh, I agree, and other people do too. By the way, that many of them just don't know how available love is. They don't. They look at the world and they realize that we're a loveless lot. We don't give a shit about anything. We kill the last whale. I mean, honest to God, the last bluefin tuna, if it's on somebody's hook, they're going to pull it out of the water and eat it because it's great sushi. They're not going to care that they have extincted one of the great fish for humanity of all time. And if that happens, it's too bad. And we're on the way to that happening because bluefin tuna were all over the place, and now they're down to just almost nothing. But if one's pulled out of the water that's 300 pounds, which would have made it the parent of a million bluefin tunas, it goes right down to the dock in Japan, and they just whack that sucker up and ship it out to the sushi places at $80 a pound or whatever they're doing with it. And that's who we are. And we have to face that and try to ask those who have free will to take a deeper look at what they're doing and say, look, if you catch a bluefin tuna, put it back. Just put it back. And anytime anyone does that, then they go back and the thing grows. If humanity stopped killing bluefin tuna now, they still might not survive. We may have collapsed the survival of the whole tribe of bluefin tuna to the point where they can no longer live in the wild. I don't know. But we should be taking bluefin tuna babies, raising them, and so that we can turn them loose in the wild in great quantity here and there and get that going back again.
Yeah.
And look, we've done that with the great marine biologist. I think she was a marine biologist. I forget her name. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. She succeeded in doing this in the Philippines with the little seahorses. Seahorses are pretty fragile little guys. And catching them and casting them in little resin blocks to sell to tourists didn't seem to matter back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and all of that. And they have legendary medicinal impacts on the body, according to the people that pound them down to powder and put them in remedies. So their life expectancy was dwindling rapidly along the coast of the Philippines, where they were thriving in the millions before. So she went there to get the people there to realize, look, there's a way out of this. You take this much of the ocean and you lock it off. Nobody fishes in it. And we do that for a couple of years, maybe 3 years. Go fish outside of it, but leave that alone. And then when you go in it after 3 years, you'll see how many of these seahorses are living there. Now you can move that block of ocean 5 miles north and do the same thing there. And if you start to regulate this, then we will grow these guys back, because we're going to get, and the tribal chief is like, nah, go on. This is a woman trying to tell us how to do our fishing, and we're not going to let that happen. And they threatened her and beat her up and did all these things, but she loved seahorses, so she persisted. And eventually, by being such a nag with it, got the chief of this particular tribal area to say, okay, all right, we'll do this. Well, what she had maybe realized is that when the chief tells the young guys don't fish between these buoys out there in the water, he has to enforce it. So she was a little bit shocked when guys would go out there to poach, and because not just the seahorses, but other things began to really come back inside this fishing area, and everybody wants to catch a fish. So you want to go to the place where the fish are, or the seahorses are, and that's inside this area that's been left alone for a year. Everybody knew that. So he had to be the policeman. He had to punish people who went in there. And so she had to take the responsibility at a certain point for whatever punishment these guys that were caught had to undergo. And it can be pretty severe in a culture like the Philippines. And that's kind of how they work. I've been there, spent some time there. It can be rough if you're one of those guys. But it all got through, and finally they realized, oh man, this place is just brimming with sea urchins. Yeah. Or not sea urchins, seahorses.
Yeah.
And that's true of any fish or sea urchins or anything else that's just one woman who commits herself to helping bring love by her actions. Now, it may never have occurred to her ever in her life to stand in the downpouring flow of love. That's a conscious act inside of her. But she was serving the need of these fish, and that gave her access to an energy that serves the need of those fish and protects her in the process. Yeah. So it isn't that people doing good in the world have to do that. But by doing that, in addition to the things that we're already doing, we are amplifying the speed of consciousness in ourselves at which this becomes epidemic. And it's true of meditation. That's what Maharishi tried to bring into the space. Meditation is simply meditate on that. Just bringing down the sunshine of love into your life, until it's so bright around you that it's as bright as the physical sun and you don't ever want it to turn off, and you love it, and it's beginning to change your nature from the inside out. And then what happens is you'll begin to see, it'll leak into that story, the beings that live in that light all the time, the other conscious beings there, because as you're becoming conscious of the field of love around you, you become conscious of the minds, awarenesses, and physical angelic presences of beings that live in it. And you go, well, like, who are you? Well, I live here. I live in this field of love all the time. I don't come down into the dense world. Well, can you do anything for me? Sure. I'm a healing angel. There are countless stories of the angels that are in operating rooms, like that one that was on the Russian peninsula. And they're beautiful, violet, tall, beautiful looking violet angelic beings that flow energy into the healing and operating rooms all over the world, while human need is being met by people who came there as surgeons and nurses and doctors to meet that need. It's just one of the things going on in the universe that we don't see, because we don't see that violet or purple diva energy and color, because we're not seeing this downflowing light of love. And so we don't see how it lights them up. The color of angels is the color they turn when love flows through them. And if there are like the earth colors of the sun in a rainbow, there are 7 different types of these main types of these angels, and they'll all turn 7 different colors in the kingdom of love. It's more beautiful than the physical colors of the physical world, but it corresponds to those colors. And you'll see these beautiful colors going on and all the interaction of these colors. And this is just the angelic community. That's only one of the communities living in the kingdom of love. And we have human beings that live there, because they've become so conscious of it that they've become conscious of their soul nature there, and they've merged their human nature and their soul nature until it's one indivisible nature. Well, that hasn't happened for humanity. And so we're providing a step between unconsciousness of love and unconsciousness of that kingdom, and how we work our way through the stage of being partially conscious of it as a human being with a personality and an ego and all of that stuff, until we become so conscious of love that we basically merge into it, which you still have a personality in the material world, but now it's a fully love expressing personality. So it's a gradual transition of ourselves from one state of consciousness at the beginning over here with very little love in us to full investment in love and a radiance of it that makes us a healing power to others. So this is not a complicated idea. And at the Love Foundry, what we're interested in, and until we have people who want to learn it, there's not a lot of point in teaching empty rooms.
Yes.
But it's the posture that you will be in relationship to love that allows it to flow down to and in through and through your life while you're doing your daily life. And it's not a Christian thing. It's not a non-Christian thing. It's not a Buddhist thing. It's not a non-Buddhist thing. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what you think or feel or what philosophy you subscribe to. It's just an idea that if you apply yourself this way, then you and love are going to become partners in your living. And as you do, you take on reality. And until you take on love, which is an aspect of life, you're living in illusion about reality. And if love is completely missing in your life, then you're going to be living under the shadow of evil, because that's all evil is the absence of love in any expression in your life. You can have will and intelligence, but they of themselves don't care. You have to blend them with love. If you want wisdom, you take love and you apply it intelligently with will. And then it becomes something significantly different. It becomes infused with love. Now, how you live that posture in relationship to love is something you can learn how to do quite easily. It's not a complicated thing. You don't have to hop on one foot all day. You just put yourself in a posture in relationship to the downflowing energy of love and let it flow. And continue to let it flow by commitment to doing that, because commitment releases nature to help you. If you're not committed, nature's not committed. You better be committed to what you want in the kingdom of love. And then nature can say, he's committed. Seb's not just on board with this, he's committed himself to doing it. And if you're climbing Everest, you'd better be committed. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those frozen popsicles along the way, because it's a tough killer trek, or any other thing you're doing that's a dangerous sport. Dangerous sports kill people, but people want to do them anyway because it takes them to the edge where that energy of beyond the physical can be found. Well, stand in the downpour of love consciously. That's where it is. You don't have to go leap off a mountain to do it. You don't have to dive to the depths of the ocean. It's everywhere in your life. Love will bring you to the hardest tests you can imagine just by declaring your unity with it, declaring your commitment to its expression in you. But the result of doing it is transformation and transmutation and grace and unity with love and the ability to make your life a joyful expression of success.
Yeah.
So
Dan, we have to close this out because we're just about to hit 2 hours.
Oh, no, we can't. We should do these things, and I don't know, maybe we can just chop these things up. They're too long. I agree. I have the ability to do this all day because I want to be in that downflowing energy all the time. Now, did you find yourself falling out of that flow of energy during this conversation and have to get back in, or becoming unconscious of it, or how'd you do? Rate yourself 1 to 10.
I would give myself a 5. I reckon. I would come out of it, remember, come back in, hold it for a while.
5 is a high score. It's a high score. But can you see yourself getting better at it? I mean, you didn't always have a 5.
No. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's definitely taken time just to even be at the place where I remember more consistently to hold that place. I think that's only because I've built more reality to that place, and I know
Exactly.
it's where I want to be.
Look, that's why football players come out for spring training. It's a hard and grueling season, or baseball players, or any sport. You have to get your conditioning up. You have to get yourself into a shape where you can do that thing over and over and over again and win the game with your team. Love's no different. But if you're doing it with others, if you're doing it with a podcast, you're doing it in a room full of people, you're doing it with a workforce where you're building something wonderful and you all know it and you're joyful at it, it's much easier because now you're holding it for each other. I'm holding you in that downflow because I'm holding me in it. And if we start holding each other, then pretty soon it becomes a common understanding that we're all doing that. And if you're tired and if you're sleepy, that's okay because we're doing it. Because when I'm tired, you'll do it for me. And this humanity will come to this place where we start to recognize and support each other in this process because we will recognize by the people who are doing it the value of it in their lives, in the lives of their companies or the lives of their businesses or whatever they're doing with others. And we will go, what are you doing? What is it that makes this feel so good and be so successful? Well, we're holding reality. We're holding life as love in our common relationship because that improves life, because life is love. That's where it comes from. And it doesn't, there's no God up there saying you don't get any because you've been a bad boy. We're all bad boys. It just keeps giving us love until we are healthy, healing boys and girls that are living in it all the time because we like it and want to be. Love knows that. Life knows that. God knows that. So they just go on doing their job until the rest of us wake up and apply that to ourselves and then stop becoming serial killers and pyromaniacs and perverts of one kind or another that require so much judgment and negative energy. We don't have to do that to each other. We aren't going to let you run around loose in society if you're setting fires and chasing young people and hurting them. But that doesn't mean we have to judge you. We just recognize that you haven't learned how to live according to the laws of love. And we can't force you to do that. But we can separate you from society if you're harming it.
Yeah.
And we can put you to death, but I don't think that that's the best use because how do you grow out of the experience if you don't spend time alive? But you see, we don't have educational systems in the prisons for people who want to learn love and give up criminal enterprise. So you just separate them from humanity until they die, or they get it over it, or they decide to transform themselves and be in harmony with the humanity that they've been feeding off of, like parasites. But we're parasitic to the earth, and it's time we stop doing that as human beings. We stop parasiting the planet and start having a symbiotic relationship with it and give something back from the kingdom of love.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Seb. Roll us out of here, and I'll talk to
Dan.
you, and we'll have another shot at this.
Yeah. Speak soon. Thank you very much.